From the things that go bump in the night to strange sounds in the attic, we've all had our share of scary experiences. But compared to the Salem Witch Trials, our tales are probably pretty tame. In 1692, more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts. 20 of them were executed before the hysteria ended, and the worst part is, this really happened. While these days we associate witchcraft with goofy costumes and magic shows, at the time, being a witch was a capital offense. But what really went down in Salem? Let's take a look back at the history of the Salem Witch Trials. And when it comes to witchcraft, few names are as synonymous with the practice as the infamous Salem Witch Trials. During the spring of 1692, Salem Village, now known as Danvers, Massachusetts, was gripped by an outbreak of witchcraft. In what would become one of the darkest chapters in American history, more than 200 people were accused of consorting with the devil. Of those accused, 20 would be executed before the trials ended later that year. The Salem Witch Trials were the product of several factors, including religious extremism, political instability, and economic inequality. Members of Salem Village were deeply religious Puritans who believed that the devil was at work in their community. They were also deeply divided over land disputes and other issues which may have contributed to the trials. The accusers were largely poor and marginalized members of society, while the accused were often wealthier and more influential. Although the exact origins of the Salem Witch Trials are unknown, historians generally agree that they began in February 1692, when a group of young girls began exhibiting strange behavior. The girls, who were between the ages of 4 and 12, started having fits, screaming, thrashing around, and even levitating. At first, their fits seemed random, but as time went on, they began to follow a pattern. The girls claimed that they were being tormented by witches, and they began to accuse specific members of the community of practicing witchcraft. The accusations quickly spread, and soon more than 200 people were accused of consorting with the devil. The accused were subjected to a series of tests to determine their guilt or innocence, including the infamous water test. This test involved suspending the accused by a rope from the wrists or ankles, until they confessed to their crimes or died. Those who survived the test were often seen as innocent, while those who died or confessed were seen as guilty. One of the most famous trials involved a woman named Bridget Bishop. She was the first person to be executed for witchcraft during the Salem trials. On June 10, 1692, Bishop was found guilty of the charges against her and was hanged in what is now known as Gallows Hill. Over the next few months, 19 more people would be executed in similar fashion. As the trials continued, however, it became clear that the accusers were engaging in a form of mass hysteria. Their accusations were often based on flimsy evidence, or no evidence at all. Many of the accused had simply fallen out of favor with the accusers, or had been accused by people with personal grudges against them. In October 1692, the governor of Massachusetts ordered that the trials be halted. The remaining accused were released, and the executions came to an end. But the damage had already been done. In total, 20 people were executed during the Salem Witch Trials. Most of them were women, but there were also several men who were accused of witchcraft. The victims were primarily poor and marginalized members of society who were easy targets for the accusers. The Salem Witch Trials had a profound impact on American history and culture. They are a reminder of the dangers of religious extremism, political instability, and economic inequality. The trials also helped to create a climate of fear and suspicion that lasted for centuries. In the aftermath of the trials, many of the families of the accused sought to recover their reputations and property. However, this was often difficult, as the stigma of witchcraft was hard to shake. Some families were able to rebuild their lives, but others remained in poverty for generations. The legacy of the Salem Witch Trials can still be felt today. The story has inspired countless books, films, and television shows, and it remains one of the most famous episodes in American history. The trials are also a reminder of the importance of due process and the rule of law. In a climate of fear and hysteria, it is easy to forget the basic principles of justice. In recent years, there has been a renewed interest in the Salem Witch Trials. Historians continue to debate the causes and effects of the trials, and new evidence is still being uncovered. Several museums and historical sites have been established in Salem to commemorate the events of 1692. These sites offer visitors a chance to learn about this dark chapter in American history and to pay tribute to the victims of the Salem Witch Trials. While the Salem witch trials were a product of their time, they remain a powerful reminder of the dangers of religious extremism, political instability, and economic inequality. The story of the Salem witch trials is a cautionary tale that should be remembered long into the future. Before we wrap up, let's take a closer look at some of the key figures involved in these infamous trials. Abigail Williams. Abigail Williams was one of the young girls who initiated the witch trials. She and her friends accused several members of the Salem community of witchcraft, and their accusations quickly spread like wildfire. Williams's motives for starting the trials are unknown, but historians believe that she may have been influenced by a combination of factors, including religious fervor, personal problems, and a desire for attention. Betty Paris. Betty Paris was another young girl whose accusations sparked the Salem witch trials. Her initial symptoms were similar to those of Abigail Williams, and she quickly joined Williams in accusing others of witchcraft. Like Williams, the reasons behind Paris's accusations are unknown, but she is said to have been a troubled child who had a history of strange behavior. Reverend Samuel Paris. Reverend Samuel Paris was the minister of Salem Village and the father of Betty Paris. He was one of the first people to accuse someone of witchcraft during the trials, and he was a key figure in the prosecution of the accused. Paris was a strict Puritan who believed that the devil was at work in Salem Village. He was eager to root out the witches who he believed were among his congregation. Judge Jonathan Corwin. Judge Jonathan Corwin presided over many of the Salem witch trials. He was a member of the Massachusetts General Court and a wealthy landowner in Salem. Corwin was seen as a fair and impartial judge, but his decisions were often influenced by the powerful members of the community. He played a key role in the conviction of several accused witches, and his rulings were instrumental in the outcome of the trials. Mary Warren. Mary Warren was one of the accused witches during the Salem witch trials. She was a young woman who worked as a servant in the household of a wealthy family in Salem. Warren was accused by Abigail Williams and Betty Paris, and she was soon arrested and imprisoned. She confessed to witchcraft in order to save her own life, but her confession did little to protect her from the wrath of the community. Warren was hanged in 1692, and she became one of the most famous victims of the Salem witch trials. Giles Corey. Giles Corey was an elderly man who lived in Salem Village. He was one of the few male accused witches during the trials, and he was seen as a threat to the community because of his knowledge and experience. Corey refused to plead guilty or not guilty to the charges against him, and he was subjected to a brutal form of coercion known as pressing. Corey was placed under heavy rocks and repeatedly pressed until he confessed. He died during the process, and his death became a symbol of the cruelty of the Salem witch trials. These individuals represent just a small fraction of the people involved in the Salem witch trials. Each of them played a role in the events that unfolded in Salem Village, and each of them is a reminder of the darkness that can fall over even the most seemingly civilized societies. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to stay tuned for more. And be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay informed about our latest content.